Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at Westward Ho! Westward Ho! As it hath been diverse times acted by the Children of Paul's, written by Thomas Dekker and John Webster. We are going into Act 5 today, and we're going to find out how it all comes together. We were saying, or someone was saying last time, that it felt like we'd concluded most of the plot lines, but there's still a journey to Brainford to find out what's happening there to tie up and see if some of the other loose ends get tied up along the way. It's an interesting question because there are quite a few random threads dangling throughout this text where you think the playwrights haven't quite tucked them in. So we'll see whether everything gets tidied up at the end satisfactorily. But there's a lot to, well, not a lot to get through for Act 5, but a reasonable amount of text to do. And so reading today, Justiniano is
Aliki Chapple in Athens.
Reading Wafer today, a wafer-thin part, is...
Hi, I'm Greg. Oh, it's good to be back.
Reading Judith, Fiddlers and Tenterhook is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. Happy to see Greg here.
Reading Mabel and Birdlime is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm coming to you from the rather snowy northwestern United States today.
Reading Monopoly and Honeysuckle today is...
Sarah Blake, coming to you from rather grey Germany.
Reading the Chamberlain and Linstock, sometimes very shortly after each other, is...
Alan in Suffolk.
Reading Whirlpool and Gosling is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm in a t-shirt, so yeah.
And reading Moll, and there's a slight question mark in our mind whether Moll is one character or another, because there's now currently in this text 2 characters called Moll. So hopefully this is one mole, but it could be 2 moles. And of course, when you've got 2 moles, they can breed, and then they'll dig up your garden, and it'd be awful. So reading Moll and Ambush is...
Lois, just one of me in London.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. It's obviously going to be that kind of day. I'm reading stage directions, and I'll leap in if I've got the doubling wrong, which I probably have. There are a lot of characters bouncing around in Act 5, and they probably talk to themselves. So hats, people. Hats and silly voices, depending on your mood. Without further ado, we'll dive into Act 5. Scene 1, enter Monopoly, Whirlpool, Linstock, and the wives, Judith, Mabel, and Moll. Their hats are off.
See, no hats.
Why, Chamberlain, will not these fiddlers be drawn forth? Are they not in tune yet? Or are the rogues afraid of the statute and dare not travel so far without a passport?
What, Chamberlain?
Where's mine host? What Chamberlain?
Enter the Chamberlain, who may sound remarkably similar to Linstock.
On, sir. Here at hand, sir.
Where's this noise? What a lousy town's this. Has Brentford no music in it?
No, but Rosening, sir, and they'll scrape themselves into your company presently.
Plague of their cat's guts and their scraping. Dost not see women here? And can we, think'st thou, be without a noise then?
Truth is, sir, one of the poor instruments caught a sore mischance last night. His most bass bridge fell down, and belike they're making a gathering for the reparations of that.
Ooh, Eric doesn't seem to be moving.
Oh, when they come.
Ooh, we got a bit of the line. Eric, are you there?
When they come, let's have them with a pox.
Well, sir, you shall, sir.
Stay, Chamberlain. Where's our knight, Sir Gosling? Where's Sir Gosling?
Trust, sir, my master and Sir Gosling are guzzling. They're dabbling together fathom deep. The knight hath drunk so much health to the gentleman yonder on his knees that he's almost lost the use of his legs.
Oh, for love, let none of them enter our room. Fie.
I would not have them cast up their accounts here for more than they mean to be drunk this 12-month.
A good Chamberlain, keep them and their healths out of our company.
I warrant you, their elves shall not hurt you.
Exit Chamberlain.
Aye, well said. They're none of our giving. Let them keep their own quarter. Nay, I told you the man would soak him if he were 10 knights. If he were a knight of gold, they'd fetch him over.
Out upon him.
There's a lieutenant and a captain amongst them too.
Nay then, look to have somebody lie on the earth for it. It's ordinary for your lieutenant to be drunk with your captain and your captain to be cast with your knight.
Did you never hear how Sir Fabian Scarecrow, even such another, took me up one night before my husband, being in wine?
No, indeed. How was it?
But I think I took him down with a witness.
How, good Tenterhook?
Nay, I'll have all your ears take part of it.
Come
on,
then.
He used to frequent me and my husband divers times, and at last comes he out one morning to my husband and says, Master Tenterhook, says he, I must trouble you to lend me £200 about a commodity which I am to deal in. And what was that commodity but his knighthood?
So,
Oh, why, you shall, Master Scarecrow, says my good man. So, within a little while after, Master Fabian was created knight.
created a knight? That's no good heraldry. You must say dubbed.
And why not created, pray?
All together now.
Aye, well
Aye,
done.
well
Put
done.
it down
Put
its
it
own
down
Its own
weapon.
weapon.
Not created. Why, all things have their being by creation.
Ah, yes, by my faithest.
But to return to my tale,
I marry Mark now.
when he had climbed up this costly ladder of preferment, he disperses the money back again very honorably, comes home, and was by my husband invited to supper. There supped with us, besides, another gentleman incident to the court, one that had bespoke me of my husband to help me into the banqueting house and see the revelling, a young gentlewoman, and that wag, our schoolmaster, Master Parenthesis, for I remember he said grace. Methinks I see him yet, how he turned up the white of the eye when he came to the last gasp, and that he was almost past grace.
Nay, he can do it.
At supper time, my new minted knight made wine the wagon to his meat, for it ran down his throat so fast that before my chambermaid had taken half up, he was not scarce able to stand.
A general fault at citizens' tables.
And I, thinking to play upon him, asked him, Sir Fabian Scarecrow, quoth I, what pretty gentlewoman will you raise up now to stall her your lady? But he, like a foul-mouthed man, swore, Zoons, I'll stall never a punk in England. Lady, there's too many already. Oh, fie, Sir Fabian, quoth I, will you call her that shall be your wife, such an odious name? And then he sets out a throat and swore again, like a stinking brave knight as he was, that women were like horses.
Oh, filthy knave.
Yeah, they'd break over any hedge to change their pasture, though it were worse. Fie, man, fie, says the gentlewoman.
Very good.
And he, bristling up his beard to rail at her too, I cut him over the thumbs thus. Why, Sir Fabian Scarecrow, did I incense my husband to lend you so much money upon your bare word? And do you backbite my friends and me to our faces? I thought you'd had more perseverance. If you bore a knightly and a degenerous mind, you would scorn it. You would wont to be more deformable amongst women. Fie, that you'll be so humorsome. Here was nobody so egregious towards you, Sir Fabian. And thus, in good sadness, I gave him the best words I could pick out to make him ashamed of his doings.
And how took he this correction?
Oh, very heavily, for he slept presently upon't. And in the morning was the sorriest night, and I warrant is so to this day, that lives by bread in England.
To see what wine and women can do. The one makes a man not to have a word to throw at a dog, The other makes a man to eat his own words, but they were never so filthy.
And I'm going to pause us there because that's broadly speaking the end of that little story time. Story time, everyone. Gather round, children. We will tell you the story of Sir Fabian Scarecrow. Why, we don't know. It doesn't appear to serve any plot function at all. It just seems to be another one of these divertissements that occasionally the script is throwing out, that they've got this bit and piece. Maybe the actor playing Moll just didn't have enough lines and you give them something. I don't know. It's sort of interesting. What did we make of the story? Lois, you were doing the reading of it.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't think this repartee was exactly devastating, but I wondered really about from the point of view of the actors. It almost seems as if this is still a fairly new children's company, and maybe Dekker and Webster are just trying to give pretty much every one of these kids a chance to show off.
Well, they've been here for a few years now, so they should be reasonably established, I would have thought.
Some of them may be kind of audience favorites. I don't know. There are some references to child actors, particular ones as being audience favorites, maybe needing to be given more to do. I don't know.
I did particularly like the line, "My master and Sir Gosling are guzzling." I did think that there's still nice bits in this. It's just to say there's a lot of it. Alan.
Presumably with the boys' companies, there will be a fair amount of churn of membership, as people moved on, having got beyond the age was appropriate. So maybe that's why we do get these sort of set pieces, which are almost being used as extended audition pieces.
I'm not so sure what the churn is. I mean, certainly we know that with some boys' companies, actually, they're no longer really boys by any meaningful definition. That's possibly a little later on from this point. So I don't know how much of a churn there is. I know people we could ask, but I mean, we do have these little. We had that little set piece with the collier the other day. So maybe there's an element of just putting bits and pieces in. Anyway, any other thoughts on the exciting story of Moll, Eric?
It does have that feel of like like you said, gather round story time, but kind of like the whole tell us what we want to know the story too. It just feels a bit weird.
It doesn't feel like any other part of the play, actually, tonally, does it? It feels slightly weird. It's like we've suddenly entered an episode of Bagpuss. Think for us, Bagpuss. Think. Lois.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, it's mainly a kind of satire on the new made knights. I mean, all these people who bought their knighthoods. There's even more about it in Eastward Ho. And it obviously was a big thing. I mean, a lot of these were people made knights around the time of James's coronation. It was part of the celebrations. And it was an obvious field for satire. So that's partly what's going on, I suppose. Sir Fabian Scarecrow doesn't appear to be a Scot. I mean, the name at least isn't particularly Scottish, but because a lot of the satire was on Scots who became knights.
Maybe they're playing it a bit safe, doing a bit of satire, but not pushing it too far. And that would explain why it feels a bit detachable. If it's essentially a there's some very specific satire going on, you plonk it into the play and hope nobody notices. Eric.
Wasn't James also famous for having made so many people knights and lords as opposed to like Elizabeth, who was very sort of scarce and sparse with her sort of dubbing people knights as well.
Well, it was a fundraising exercise for James. I mean, that's why they were, it was right for satire. As it was, rather than the custom before, it's basically how much money have you got? Excellent, become a knight. Lynn.
Yeah, and Fabian Scarecrow is clearly unworthy of the honor. Scarecrow, so obviously he's poor. Because he's skinny. Because the name implies that, and he's ill-mannered, and he has to borrow the money, to dole out the bribes that it takes to be a knight. So, he can't hold his liquor. So yeah. So I mean, this is the whole point here. The only possible point seems to be a critique of the practice of selling knighthoods, because Fabian Scarecrow is clearly unworthy of that honor.
Right. Well, let's pick up. Whirlpool is going to ask about the musicians who are having a bad time of it. From what we heard earlier. So Whirlpool, take it away.
I see these fiddlers cannot build up their bridge that some music may come over us.
Oh, faith, they're drunk too. What shall stew there for?
I think that's Monopoly.
I'm sorry, we're having one of those days. My script has just skipped, and I'm right at the end of the play. What page is it?
49.
Sit up at cards all night.
That's serving man's fashion.
Drink burnt wine and eggs, then.
That's an exercise for your suburb wenches.
No, let's set upon our posset and so march to bed. For I begin to wax light with having my natural sleep pulled out of my eyes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Be it so.
Be it so.
The sack
The
posset and to
posset
bed.
and to bed.
What, Chamberlain? I must take a pipe of tobacco.
Not here.
Not here.
Not here.
Not here.
I'd rather love a man that takes a purse than him that takes tobacco.
By my little finger, I'll break all your pipes and burn the case in the box too, and you draw your stinking smoke afore me.
Well, prithee, good Mistress Tenterhook, I'll have done in a trice.
Do you long to have me swoon?
I'll use but half a pipe in troth.
Do you long to see me lie at your feet?
Smell to it. 'Tis perfumed.
Oh, God, you anger me. You stir my blood. You move me. You make me spoil a good face with frowning at you. This was ever your fashion, so to smoke my husband. When you come home, that I could not bide him in mine eye. He was moated. It made me thought a month after. Pray, sprawl in another room. Fie.
Well, come. We'll for once feed her humour.
Get 2 rooms off at least, if you love her.
Oh, 3, Master Linstock, 3. Is that right?
But we'll dance to Norwich and take it there. Stay till we return again. Here's a stir. You'll ill abide a fiery face that cannot endure a smoky nose.
Come, let's satisfy our appetite.
And that will be hard for us, but we'll do our best.
And exeunt the citizens.
So, are they departed? What string may we 3 think that these 3 gallants harp upon by bringing us to this sinful town of Brainford, huh?
I know what string they would harp upon, if they could put us into the right tune.
I know what one of them buzzed in mine ear, till, like a thief in a candle, he made mine ears burn. But I swore to say nothing.
I know, as verily they hope and brag one to another, that this night they'll row westward in our husbands' wherries, as we hope to be rowed to London tomorrow in a pair of oars. But wenches, let's be wise, and make rooks of them that I warrant are now setting purse nets to coney catch us.
Content.
They shall know that citizens' wives have wit enough to outstrip 20 such gulls. Though we are merry, let's not be mad. Be as wanton as new married wives, as fantastic and light-headed to the eye as feather makers, but as pure about the heart as if we dwelt amongst them in Blackfriars.
We'll eat and drink with them.
Oh, yes, eat with them as hungrily as soldiers drink, as if we were frows. Talk as freely as jesters, but do as little as misers who, like dry nurses, have great breasts but give no milk. It were better we should laugh at their popinjays than live in fear of their prating tongues. Though we lie all night out of the city, they shall not find country wenches of us. But since we have brought them thus far into a fool's paradise, leave them in't. The jest shall be a stock to maintain us and our pew fellows in laughing at christenings, cryings out, and upsittings this 12-month. How say you, wenches? Have I set the saddle on the right horse?
Oh, 'twill be excellent.
But how shall we shift them off?
not as ill debtors do their creditors with good words, but as lawyers do their clients when they're overthrown by some new knavish trick. And thus it shall be. One of us must dissemble to be suddenly very sick.
I'll be she.
Nay, though we can all dissemble well, yet I'll be she. For men are so jealous, or rather envious of one another's happiness, especially in these out-of-town gossipings, that he who shall miss his hen, if he be a right cock indeed, will watch the other from treading.
That's certain, I know that by myself.
And, like Aesop's dog, unless himself might eat hay, will he lie in the manger and starve, but he'll hinder the horse from eating any. Besides, it'll be as good as a Welsh hook for you to keep out the other at the stave's end. For you may boldly stand upon this point, that unless every man's heels may be tripped up, you scorn to play at football.
That's certain. Peace. I hear them spitting after their tobacco.
A chair. One of you keep as great a coil and calling as if you ran for a midwife. The other hold my head whilst I cut my lace.
Passion of me, Master Monopoly, Master Linstock, and you be men, help to draw Mistress Tenterhook. Oh, quickly, quickly, she's sick and taken with an agony.
Enter, as she cries, Monopoly, Whirlpool, and Linstock.
Sick? How now? What's the matter?
What's the matter?
Oh, sweet Moll, call up thy spirits.
Oh, Master Monopoly, my spirits will not come at my calling. I am terrible and ill. Sure, I'm struck with some wicked planet, for it hit my very heart. Oh, I feel myself worse and worse.
Oh, some burnt sack for her, good wenches, or posset drink. Fox her, this rogue Chamberlain. What have you call him? How her pulses beat. A draught of cinnamon water now for her were better than 2 tankers out of the Thames. How now, huh?
Ill.
I am accursed to spend money in this town of iniquity. There's no good thing ever comes out of it, and it stands upon such musty ground by reason of the river that I cannot see a tender woman can do well in it. Svort, sick now? Cast down, now 'tis come to the push.
Oh, my mind misgives me that all's not sound at London.
Pox on him that be not sound. What need that touch you?
I fear you'll never carry me thither.
Pooh, say not so.
Pray, let my clothes be utterly undone, and then lay me in my bed.
Walk up and down a little.
Oh, Master Linstock, 'tis no walking will serve my turn. Have me to bed, good sweet Mistress Honeysuckle. I doubt that old hag, Julian of Rainford, has bewitched me.
Look to her, good wenches.
Aye, so we will. And to you, too. This was excellent.
Exeunt the 3 women.
This is strange.
Villainous, spiteful luck. No matter, tell the 2 old bias.
Peace. Mark how he's nipped. Nothing grieves me so much as that poor Pyramus here must have a wall this night between him and his Thisbe.
No remedy, trusty Troilus, and it grieves me as much that you'll want for your false Cressida tonight. For here's no Sir Pandarus to usher you into your chamber.
I'll summon a parley to one of the wenches and see how all goes.
No whispering with the common enemy. By this iron, he sees the devil that sees how all goes amongst the women tonight. Nays foot, if I stand piping till you dance, damn me.
Why, you let me call to 'em, but at the keyhole?
Pooh, good Master Linstock, I'll not stand by whilst you give fire at your keyholes. I'll hold no trencher till another feeds, no stirrup till another gets up, be no doorkeeper. I had not been so often at court, but I know what the backside of the hangings are made of. I'll trust none under a piece of tapestry. Videlicet a coverlet.
What will you say if the wenches do this to gull us?
No matter. I'll not be doubly gulled by them and by you. Go. Will you take the lease of the next chamber, and do as I do?
And what's that?
What's that?
Any villainy in your company, but nothing out on it. Will you sit up or lie by it?
Hey, lie, sure. For lying is most in fashion.
Troth, then, you'll have you before me.
Shall be
Shall be
yours.
yours.
Yours, if faith. I'll play Janus with two faces and look a squint both ways for one night.
Well, say you shall be a doorkeeper.
Since we must swim, let's leap into one flood. We'll either be all naught or else all good.
And they exit. There's a lot of stuff to unpack here that I'm finding really interesting. I would like to know who Gillian Brainford is. The Lois may know the answer to that, but do you know who Gillian Brainford is?
Me? Well, she's supposed to be a witch. I mean, there's songs about her. I think I don't know whether she actually existed, but they often refer to her, the old woman of Brainford. Yeah, she's mentioned in other plays.
Right. Okay. We need to do a thing on the Gillian of Brainford then. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, so we've got another tobacco sequence that I particularly like, and I'm also interested just about this the sort of class. You know, what's the classy thing to do when you're staying at? Oh, we can't do that. That's out of fashion. You know, that's what serving men do. So we can't do that. That's exercise for your suburb wenches. I mean, there's really interesting little bit of social one-upmanship going on here. And then the chaps want to go. Oh, shall we have a smoke? And they'll go. No. Oh, it's awful. It's awful. You want to come to us after smoking, and it's really interesting because the men were all happy to go off and visit sex workers last time, and were frustrated in their approaches there. But I think they were perfectly happy to continue in that progress if in general if they hadn't been sort of caught. Whereas here the women are very much going. You know, this party isn't what I thought it was going to be, is it? Should we just go home? Should we just pretend to be sick? Pretend to be sick. And I absolutely love it. I think it's really interesting stuff. Lynn?
Yeah, so the women say, well, we'll stay long enough to eat and drink and party and sing some songs and have a good time, but we're not good. But that's where we draw the line. We're not going to do anything to dishonor ourselves, and then we'll talk about it when we get home. I kind of feel like that is what they were saying, which I didn't necessarily see coming. Moll seemed to have a genuine interest in Monopoly, but maybe she just wanted to be courted. Maybe she just wanted to be flirted with. She really didn't have any intention of going over that line. So I wasn't necessarily prepared for the wives to decide that they were going to protect their chastity. So this is going in a slightly different direction than I was expecting, but I think you could make that work without wrong-footing the audience too much, you know.
Yeah, and again, we've said this a few times. There's elements of this play where once you know what's going on, you can layer that into a production so that these things function much better overall. That we've been wrong-footed a few times about intentions and why is this happening. Sometimes because it's not necessarily quite there, but sometimes because it just hasn't quite revealed itself, and the play does manage to be quite random. But I'm interested in that. These are people who are just like the idea of going out and having exciting, affairs, but they're actually not. They don't actually want to do it. They just want to have a night out. Lynn?
I read years ago that somebody said that for men, flirting is a means to an end, and for women, it's an end in itself. And I wonder if that's always been true. That the women like to flirt with the men, they like to tease them, they like to party with them, but they have no intention of sleeping with them.
Aliki?
Yeah, I mean, okay, but also these are two men writing this play about some very masculine ideas of what women want.
Yes, and it is notable that the men go off to visit sex workers who they've clearly visited before and will probably, if they hadn't got caught, visit again. Whereas the women don't go across the line. So there is that element there as well. Lois and then Aliki again.
Yeah, I think there's the whole idea that adultery is a sin, which the women do really know. And I think it sort of explains something which I think would bother a lot of people about this play if they took it in a 21st century line. I mean, the women accept favors from the men, and for that matter, Justiniano's wife accepts all sorts of stuff from the Lord. And then they just refuse to have sex. But, I think most people nowadays would feel that, you're being terribly compromised and you really shouldn't do that sort of thing. It's like, there are terms for women that do that kind of thing. And, but clearly the assumption that this horrible sinful thing is the actual act of sex, and that is so horrible that it doesn't seem to matter what else you do as long as you don't do that.
Aliki.
And just to kind of undermine my own point to some extent, at least one of the men seemed to really want the prostitute to think that he was great, to guess him first among the list of her clients.
Lynn.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of the guy at the I don't know if you have these in the UK, but at the titty bar, yeah, like, I think she really likes me.
Yes, there was very much a vibe of that, wasn't there? Okay, let's see where we're going. For Act 5, Scene 2, not very far, to be fair, because enter a noise of fiddlers. Don't know what that noise is. Some fiddling.
Actually, the name sometimes for a group, I think there was something called Sneaks Noise mentioned in another play, and I think there were various groups called something Noise, so it might be like band even.
It might be the house band. Okay, enter a noise of fiddlers. Recently come back from tour for one night only at Paul's. Following the Chamberlain, enter a noise of fiddlers.
Come, follow me. I warrant you, I'd lost more by not falling into a sound that night than ever you got at one job, since it pleased you to make a noise. Tell you, gold is no money with them. Follow me and thumb as you go. You put some into their ears while I provide to put something into their bellies. Follow close and thumb.
Exeunt. Enter Sir Gosling and Birdlime, pulled along by him.
What kin art thou to Long Meg of Westminster? Thou'rt like her.
Somewhat alike, sir, at a blush. Nothing akin, sir, saving in height of mind, and that she was a goodly woman.
Mary Ambrey, do you not know me? Had not I a sigh of this sweet physiognomy at Rhenish winehouse? Late last day, the Stillard, yeah. Whither art bound, galley foist? Whither art bound? Whence comest thou, female yeoman of the guard?
From London, sir.
Dost come to keep the door, Ascabard?
My reparations hither is to speak with the gentlewomen here that drink with your worship at the Dutch house of meeting.
Drunk with me? You lie, not drunk with me, but what faith wouldst with the women? They are abed, art not midwife? One of them told me thou art night woman.
Music within from the fiddlers.
I have brought some women abed in my time, sir.
Aye, and some young men too, hast not Pandora? How now? Where's the noise?
I'll commit your worship.
To the stocks, art to justice, shalt not commit me.
Enter fiddlers.
Dance first in faith. Why, scrapers appear under the wench's comical window, by the Lord. That's daggers. Cannot sin be set ashore once in a rain upon your country quarters, but it must have fiddling. What set of villains are you, you perpetual ragamuffins?
The town consort, sir.
Consort with a pox. Cannot the shaking of the sheets be danced without your town piping? Nay, then let all hell roar.
I beseech you, sir, put up yours, and we'll put up ours.
Play, you lousy Hungarians. See, look, the mail pole is set up. We'll dance about it. Keep the circle, Mackerel.
I'm no mackerel. I'll keep no circles.
Play, life of Pharaoh, play. The board shall teach me a Scotch jig.
Bawd, I defy thee and thy jigs whatsoever thou art, were I in place where I'd make thee prove thy words.
I would prove a mother best be trust. Why, do I not know you, Granam? And that sugar loaf? Do I not know Mexera?
I'm none of your Megs. Do not nickname me so. I will not be nicked.
You will not. You will not. How many of my name of the glowworms have paid for your furred gowns, thou woman's broker?
No, sir, I shall scorn to be beholden to any glowworm that lives upon the earth for my fur. I could keep myself warm without glowworms.
Canst sing, woodpecker? Come sing and wake 'em.
Would you should know well it, I am no singing woman.
Howl then, foot sing or howl, or I'll break your ostrich egg shoulder.
My egg hurt you not. What do you mean to flourish so?
Sing, Madge, sing, owlet.
How can I sing with such a sour face? I'm haunted with a cough and cannot sing.
One of your instruments, mountebanks, come here, clutch, clutch.
Alas, sir, I'm an old woman. I know not how to clutch an instrument.
Look, Mark, to and fro as I rub it, make a noise. It's no matter. Thy hunt's up to waken vice.
I shall never rub it in tune.
Will you scrape?
So you will let me go into the parties. I will saw and make a noise.
Do then, shout into the parties and part them, shout, my lean Lena.
If I must needs play the fool in my old days, let me have the biggest instrument, because I can hold that best. I shall cough like a broken-winded horse if I gape once to sing.
No matter, cough out thy lungs.
No, sir, though I'm old and worm-eaten, I'm not so rotten.
And there is a song. We don't know what it is.
La. Will your worship be rid of me now?
Fain, as rich men's heirs would be of their gouty dads. That's the hothouse where your parties are sweating. Amble, go tell the parties I've sent them a mast to their ship.
Yes, forsooth, I'll do your errand.
And exit Birdlime.
Half musty still, by thundering Jove. With what wedge of villainy might I cleave out an hour or two? Fiddlers, come, strike up. March before me. Chamberlain shall put a crown for you into his bill of items. You shall sing bawdy songs under every window in the town. Up will the clowns start, down come the winches, we'll set the men a fighting, the women a scolding, the dogs a barking. You shall go on fiddling, and I follow dancing lantera. Carry your instruments, play, and away.
And exuent Gosling and Fiddlers and that little comic interlude that I don't think advances the plot in any way, shape or form. Once again, with lengthy mentions to Long Meg of Westminster, which was is sadly a lost play, but a very interesting play. There are other accounts of the kind of narrative material from it. Long Meg travels to London, owns a tavern, cross-dresses, gets into fights, joins the army, comes back again. It's all sorts of things get done by Long Meg. And definitely has quite a massive hinterland that we can or cannot engage with in other ways, if not in the original play, which is sadly lost. But thoughts on this interesting little aside scene? Lois, then Lynn, then Eric.
Yeah, there's also a reference to Mary Ambree, who I think was a woman who, I think maybe her husband was killed in fighting and she took up the gun and fought. Anyway, the reference is obviously to masculine women. And I assume this means that Birdlime was probably the oldest boy there, or at any rate, the tallest, and, looked sort of suspiciously not very much like a woman. And that's mainly what Gosling seems to be getting at here. Apart from that, I mean, it seems to be he's trying to get in, and I think they're both trying to get in, and neither of them can. And he's also trying to keep her out.
Yeah, it's there's a sort of slightly weird gameplay to that feels like it needs to be workshopped a bit to really understand what's going on. Lynn, then Eric, then Alan.
The one thing we might, need this scene for is to tell us that Birdlime has made it to Brainford. Like, she's said she was going, and now she's there. So we kind of need to know that.
Yeah, but it's quite a long scene to do that, and she could just arrive. I'm not sure how much we need to know she's arrived in that way. I don't know. The next scene may require prior knowledge. Eric.
Yeah, I was just kind of, because I don't know what to think about this, but then there's a part of me going, is there a reference to Tarleton here? Because wasn't he one who kind of had musicians to wake him up or something?
There is a story about Tarleton having essentially his own house band who would wake him up in the mornings and an alarm clock. Yes, whether it's true or not is another matter.
Yeah, I just like that somehow he now has an entourage and like to sort of make sound wherever he goes for Gosling. And the whole interlude with Birdlime reminded me a bit of like Luce from The Wise Woman of Hoxton. Where the second Luce who's dressed up as a man to infiltrate the business and sort everything out. I don't know. That was just what it reminded me of. Lots of dirty jokes.
There were lots of dirty jokes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we were told earlier that Gosling was in his cups with others in the other room. So I'm just wondering whether this was a particular actor it was written for who was good at playing drunk prostitutes. You know, and it's your time for your turn. You know, you've done this for years. Now's your chance to go on and shine.
Depends whether we've really got that many drunk people from this company. I'm not sure whether there's much of that. I'll go to Elizabeth and Lois.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the gender politics in this. I was thinking about, I had to remind myself, Elizabeth, these are men pretending to be women who are pretending to be prostitutes. And I was just thinking to myself, like, there's like a line that I feel like is crossed. At the end, it's become like a romp because the fiddlers go off with Gosling and they're all playing music and we're going to play. But they're talking about like performing bawdy jokes. We had a lot of very rude jokes in the scene. And then I was just thinking, like, is this on the edge of like what's appropriate? Or is it just my modern day sensibilities? Am I being a bit too sensitive?
Well, I mean, in a sense, it's not just it's some men writing for boys to pretend to be women who on that, and we don't know what the song is as well that Birdlime sings, and there's potential. I mean, that could be again another series of innuendos or something that like, adds another layer to what's going on here. We don't sadly have the lyrics for the songs in this play. We just have an indication that there are songs, but it's a boys' company play, so songs is what you get. Lois.
Yeah, and that must be part of the point of the scene, which otherwise does seem pretty gratuitous, is that there's quite a lot of music in it because of the musicians who are presumably performing on and off. And also that's one of the standard things, I guess, that very drunk people did, was to get hold of musicians and go around and wake everybody up by performing under their windows.
Which is, of course, hilarious. Eric.
Yeah, I'm not sure what era this was in, but I seem to remember I was reading some stuff about like Orcadian folklore and like bridal customs ages, like ancient-ish bridal customs, and they had something similar where the men would muster all the music and sort of like basically make noise as part of the bachelor party. Well, I mean, in the time when bachelor parties did not exist, as a concept.
Okay, right. Well, we're into the what I think is the final scene. So we're going to have, I'm sure all of the loose ends will be tied up, and we're all going to be talking to ourselves. I'll say to Lois, if you could read Merchant's Wife as and when any dialogue does appear, because it does seem to be differentiated from Moll, whose name is probably actually Claire. It's fine. Don't get confused. Anyway, Act 5, Scene 3, enter Tenterhook. Honeysuckle, Wafer, Justiniano and his wife with ambush and Chamberlain.
And ambush, as that an honest fellow, scout in some back room till the watchword be given for sallying forth.
Done's the mouse.
Exit ambush.
A little low woman, sayest thou, in a velvet cap, and one of them in a beaver? Brother Honeysuckle and Brother Wafer, hark ye, they are they.
But art sure their husbands are abed with them?
Think so, sir, I know not. Left them together in one room. What division fell them out amongst them? Fates can discover, not I.
Leave us, good Chamberlain. We are some of their friends. Leave us, good Chamberlain. Be merry a little. Leave us, honest Chamberlain.
And exit Chamberlain.
We are abused. We are bought and sold in Brainford Market. Never did the sickness of one belied nurse-child stick so cold to the hearts of 3 fathers. Never were 3 innocent citizens so horribly, so abominably wrung under the withers.
What shall we do? How shall we help ourselves?
How should we help ourselves?
How shall we pull this thorn out of our foot before it rankle?
Yes, well enough. One of us stay here to watch, do you see, to watch, have an eye, have an ear. I and my brother Wafer and Master Justiniano will set the town in an insurrection, bring hither the constable and his billmen, break open upon 'em, take 'em in their wickedness, and put 'em to their purgation.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Ha ha! Purgation!
We'll have 'em before some country justice of quorum, for we scorn to be bound to the peace, and this justice shall draw his sword in our defence. If we find them to be malefactors, we'll tickle 'em.
Agreed. Do not say, but do it. Come.
Are you mad? Do you know what you do? Whither will you run?
To
set the town
in uproar.
An uproar. Will you make the townsmen think that Londoners never come hither but upon St. Thomas night? Say you should rattle up the constable, thrash all the country together, hedge in the houses with flails, pike-staves, and pitchforks, take your wives napping, these western smelts nibbling, and that, like so many Vulcans, every smith should discover his Venus dancing with Mars in a net. Would this plaster cure the headache?
Aye, it would.
Nay,
Yeah,
it should.
should.
Nego, no. It shall be proved unto you your heads would ache worse. When women are proclaimed to be light, they strive to be more light. For who dare disprove a proclamation?
Aye, but when light wives make heavy husbands, let these husbands play mad Hamlet and cry revenge. Come, and we'll do so.
Pray stay. Be not so heady at my entreaty.
My wife entreats you, and I entreat you to have mercy on yourselves, though you have none over the women. I'll tell you a tale. This last Christmas, a citizen and his wife, as it might be one of you, were invited to the revels one night at one of the inns of court. The husband, having business, trusts his wife thither to take up a room for him before. She did so, but before she went, doubts arising what blocks her husband would stumble at to hinder his entrance, it was consulted upon by what token, by what trick, by what banner or brooch he should be known to be he when he rapped at the gate.
Very good.
Very good.
The crowd, he was told, would be greater, their clamours greater, and able to drown the throats of a shoal of fishwives. He himself, therefore, devises an excellent watchword, and the sign at which he would hang out himself should be a horn. He would wind his horn, and that should give them warning that he was come.
So,
The Dorchmen and Whifflers had an item to receive him. He comes, rings out an alarum with his horn, enters with a shout. All the house rises, thinking some sowgelder pressed in. His wife blushed, the company jested. The simple man, like a beggar going to the stocks, laughed as not being sensible of his own disgrace. And hereupon the Punies set down this decree, that no man shall hereafter come to laugh at their revels if his wife be entered before him, unless he carry his horn about him.
I'll not trouble them.
So if you trumpet abroad and preach at the market cross your wife's shame, 'tis your own shame.
Shall
What shall we do then?
Take my counsel, I'll ask no fee for it. Bar out host, banish mine hostess, beat away the chamberlain, let the ostlers walk, enter you the chambers peaceably, lock the doors gingerly, Look upon your wives woefully, but upon the evil doers most wickedly.
What shall we reap by this?
An excellent harvest. This, you shall hear the poor, mouse-trapped, guilty gentleman call for mercy. Your wives you shall see kneeling at your feet and weeping and wringing and blushing and cursing Brainford and crying, pardonnez-moi, 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 while you have the choice to stand either as judges to condemn them, beadles to torment them, or confessors to absolve them. And what a glory will it be for you three to kiss your wives like forgetful husbands, to exhort and forgive the young men like pitiful fathers, and then to call for oars and to cry, hey for London, to make a supper and to drown it all in sack and sugar, and go to bed, to rise and open shop, where you may ask any man what lie lacks with your cap off, and none shall perceive whether the brims ring you.
We'll raise no towns.
No, let's knock first.
Aye, that's the best. I'll summon a parley.
And there's a knocking on the door, but we'll pause there. It's like the scene opens with more of a bang of it. Let's raise the whole town, and no, let me tell you a story. And once again, we have, as has been noted in the chat, story time. I mean, there's a purpose in the sense that it brings them, it simmers the situation down, and it mirrors the previous story, so it feels like the previous story. You know, I really did like the bit when everyone's going, very good. So, oh no, and there is something quite nice about the way they turn around and go, should we just knock? Yeah, let's just knock on the door. And there is something quite nice about that. It doesn't feel quite so gratuitous as the earlier story did, and some of the other bits. It had a bit more fun to it. Thoughts from the room on that front, or other fronts, as it were. Aliki.
I mean, it's a nice change for Justiniano, who started out the play going, my wife is cheating on me, I know my wife is cheating on me, to end up going, so listen, if you think your wife is cheating on you, maybe don't shout it up and down the whole river so that everybody knows from here to the East End.
Yeah, and we are getting some nice bits of, once again, geography to just reiterate the, just bring back the title element of this story, which I feel is important. Lynn.
Yeah, and there's a little more nuance to Justiniano in that, one of the husbands says, so what do we hope to accomplish here? And he says, well, if you catch them red-handed, so to speak, you have your choice whether to punish. He gives them three choices, and I don't remember what they are, or like a priest, absolve them. He gives them the choice to forgive their wives, which is not something I would have guessed would be in, kind of on Justiniano's radar in that first scene. So maybe he's grown a little as a character, that he sees forgiveness as a very real option. So even if the wives were guilty, which we know they're not, there's a possibility of reconciliation, which I think is kind of nice.
Yeah, and it's I mean, we have a line from the merchant's wife: "Pray steady, be not so heady at my entreaty," which is pretty much all we've heard from the merchant's wife even during the previous scene, which was sort of a reconciliation with them. But again, we didn't see it. And Sarah was saying, I think, and various others have said last time, let's hope we have a good scene between Justiniano and the merchant's wife. The fact that I hadn't actually allocated anyone to read the lines suggests how prominently that character's text lands in Act 5. And so, that question of a journey for Justiniano, he kind of really wanted a reconciliation scene at some point in this act, or the end of the last one. And this text is not giving us one. And also just actually about Justiniano's initial beginning, is he just flying off the handle? Is he doing it deliberately so that he can set up the journey that we go through here? Is the whole thing a deliberate test rather than just an emotional outburst that leads to a test? How planny is Justiniano? And there's, is he just playing into the Italian stereotype that we were talking about in the first session, that everyone expects him to do this, so therefore he does, rather than actually he's quite calculating. There's something about all of this that is doing all sorts of interesting bits of work, and I'm not sure how much of it is deliberate and how much is just how it's fallen out. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too, especially in the light of the scene we read yesterday. The fact that the one line she has in that scene, in fact, is just something. Yes, if it please you or something. In other words, she's totally subservient and seems to be quite happy to go along with whatever her husband wants. And clearly, I mean, everybody felt there's a missing scene somewhere in which the two of them have been reconciled. I mean, I pictured a wonderful one where he swings in through the window on a rope where she's captured and explains what he's going to do and says, "Here, just take off this dress. I'll wear it. You lie down, pretend to be dead. I'll explain it all later." The trouble is that the dramatists obviously decided that they wanted the surprise effect on the audience rather than any kind of explanation or setting up. And so we have to assume that something like that must have happened.
They could have put it after the scene. I mean, they could still have the reconciliation. It's frustrating, and I'm now actively trying to think of a suitable reconciliation scene we've done from another play that we could possibly nick some dialogue from, just to fill in that gap. Because it's not even something you could do properly in dumb show. It's not like sometimes you have a play where you think, well, we can make that character more prominent by having them do this or do that, but there needs to be a conversation here, and there isn't one, and it's sort of frustrating.
But the trouble is that whole scene that he set up, obviously they have to have agreed on it. I mean, he kind of got her to lie down and play dead, and got her to take off her dress so he could wear it, or whatever they're doing with the costumes. But I mean, they have to have already agreed on it, and that's the trouble. That they can't put the scene in there because it would spoil the surprise.
Oh well. We'll think of something. We have, about 40 minutes to come up with a plan. Okay, the scene continues, and we can infer the knocking on the door. Wafer's summoning a parley, and we have one of the inhabitants, Moll, speaking from within.
Who's there? Have you stockfish in hand that you beat so hard? Who are you?
That's my wife. Let Justiniano speak, for they all know our tongues.
What a murrain ale these colts to keep such a kicking. Monopoly?
Yes.
Is Master Linstock up too, and the captain?
Both are in the field. Will you open your door?
Oh, you are proper gamesters to bring false dice with you from London to cheat yourselves? Is possible that 3 shallow women should gull 3 such gallants?
What means this?
Have we defied you upon the walls all night to open our gates to you in the morning? Our honest husbands, they, silly men, lie praying in their beds now that the water under us may not be rough, the tilt that covers us may not be rent, and the straw about our feet may keep our pretty legs warm. I warrant they walk upon Queenhithe as Leander did for Hero to watch for our landing. And should we wrong such kind hearts? Would we might ever be troubled with a toothache then?
This thing that makes fools of us thus is my wife.
And there's knocking, and this time Mabel responds.
Aye, knock your bellies full. We hug one another a bed and lie laughing till we tickle again to remember how we sent you a bat fowling.
An almond parrot. Oh, it's my Mabel Rab's voice. I know by the sound.
What? You have not spoiled half already, and you'll spoil all if you dam up not your mouths. Villainy, nothing but villainy. I am afraid they have smelt your breaths at the keyhole, and now they said to catch you flounders, whilst in the meantime the concupiscentous malefactors make 'em ready and take London napping.
I'll not be
Not beguiled so.
Show yourselves to be men and break open doors.
Break open doors and show yourselves to be beasts. If you break open doors, Your wives may lay flat burglary to your charge.
Lay a pudding. Burglary.
Will you then turn corridons because you are among clowns? Shall it be said you have no brains, being in Brainford?
Master parenthesis, we will enter and set upon them.
Well, do so, but enter not so that all the country may cry shame of your doings. Knock him down, burst open Erebus, and bring an old house over your heads if you do.
No matter, we'll bear it off with head and shoulders.
They knock again.
You cannot enter indeed, law. Well, to my pitikin, our 3 husbands summon a parley. Let that long old woman either creep under the bed or else stand upright behind the painted cloth.
And exit Mabel, having poked her head out through the door.
Do you hear, you Mabel?
Let's never hide our heads now, for we are discovered.
But all this while my honeysuckle appears not.
Why, then 2 of them have pitched their tents there, and yours lies in ambuscado with your enemy there.
Stand upon your guard there, while I batter here.
And they knock at the men's door. They knock at the door again. Yes.
Who's there?
Hold, I'll speak in a small voice like one of the women. Here's a friend. Are you up? Rise, rise, stir, stir.
Odds foot, what weasel are you? Are you going to catch quails that you bring your pipes with you? I'll see what trouble ghost it is that cannot sleep.
And Monopoly looks out.
Oh, Master Monopoly, God save you.
Amen. The last time I saw you, the devil was at mine elbow in buff. What? 3 merry men and 3 merry men and 3 merry men we too. How does my wife, Master Monopoly? Who? My overthwart neighbour? Passing well, this is kindly done. Sir Gosling is not far from you. We'll join our armies presently. It be rare fields to walk in. Captain, rise. Captain Linstock, bestir your stumps, for the Philistines are upon us.
Exit Monopoly.
This Monopoly is an arrant knave, a cogging knave, for all he's a courtier. If Monopoly be suffered to ride up and down with other men's wives, he'll undo both city and country.
And we're just going to pause there because we've got a lot of popping in and out of doors. We've got the women in one door, the men in the other, and they're sort of popping in and out. We've got Justiniano pretending to be other people, presumably, doing different voices, and sort of giving a sense of what's going on. I do like the way Wafer presumably says incredibly loudly, "An almond parrot, that's my bad," really loudly, and just shush, shush. You're not figured out the game that we're playing here. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of fun to be had with this sort of back and forth to a degree, and stuff. Any thoughts or questions about the mechanics of this, Aliki?
Well, I mean, this is the mirror of the scene where the men were caught out we read it yesterday in the bordello. So I think, yeah, it's the same kind of doors farce thing, funny voices. Shh, no, she'll hear you. Who's that? Pretend it's lots of fun.
Yes, Lois.
Only the difference is the women aren't really being caught out because, the big surprise, I think what they're doing, they're pretending that they think that their husbands are in fact their would-be lovers and that they're making fun of them and talking sympathetically and mockingly about their husbands. And then I think the lovers are discovering, the husbands are discovering that the supposed lovers are not in that room at all, but off somewhere else and being awakened after a totally useless night. And so,
yes, they're discovering their wives are honest, whereas in the previous scene they were discovering that each of them were in the same place, and trying to attach themselves to the same sex worker. Lynn.
Yeah, I think you need to make what's going on really clear here. I'm not sure how you would do that. Because the first wife who says, we wouldn't do that to our husbands. Like, why would we, we treat honest, loving men that way? And then Mabel says, knock your bellies full. We're not coming out. Like, haha, we sent you a bat fouling. That all happens before she pokes her head out and says to herself or to the audience or the young women, oh, shoot, it's our husband. So those first two lines, I think the women genuinely think that their would-be lovers are knocking at the door.
Yeah.
So the husbands hear, haha, we're not letting you in. And we're like, oh. So that's kind of a complex reaction on their part. On the one hand, they should be glad that their wives are not in fact cheating on them, but they're kind of disappointed that they're wrong. So, but I think it needs to be really clear that the men know that their suspicions were in fact unfounded, and now they're going to have to kind of reconcile. And that the women have decided that they're not going to give out, they're not going to give over before their husbands show up.
And that's sort of why they also go to the other door and checking in on the men, and the men are going, well, we've had a terrible, all this disappointing night too. So I think in practice it will come across quite well. It flows as quite a fun little scene. Any other thoughts before we conclude the narrative thread, Elizabeth?
I really felt that this was very much like a dynamic play with a lot of physical business, as you might say, Rob. And I like that. I feel like the movement of the characters, popping in and out of windows, knocking on doors, answering in different voices. I think that just kind of keeps the audience alert and awake. And at Act 5, Scene 3, you need that.
Yeah, especially if we've had story time, so we need to wake up from story time. And get the action going. Okay, well, I think we're coming to our final reconciliation. The odds on people talking to themselves are increasing. Sarah's already managed to talk to herself once, but we think she got away with it. And we'll see. There'll probably be more of that. I apologise. Anyway, enter the three wives.
Moll, mask thyself. They shall not know thee.
Oh, no, sweetheart.
What make you here?
Not that which you make here.
Marry, you make bulls of your husbands.
Buzzards, do we not? Out, you yellow infirmities. Do all flowers show in your eyes like columbines?
Wafer, what says the collier? Is not thy soul blacker than his coals? How does the child? How does my flesh and blood, wife?
Your flesh and blood is very well recovered now, Mouse.
I know 'tis. The collier has a sack full of news to empty.
Moll, where be your 2 rings with diamonds?
At hand, sir, here with a wet finger.
I dreamed you had lost them. What a profane varlet is this shoulder clapper to lie thus upon my wife and her rings?
And enter Monopoly, Whirlpool, and Linstock, who say,
"Save you, gentlemen.
And you for our wives.
For our wives from you. Your wives have saved themselves for once.
Master Monopoly, though I meet you in High Germany, I hope you can understand broken English. Have you discharged your debt?"
"Yes, sir, with a double charge. Your harpy that set his 10 commandments upon my back had 2 diamonds to save him harmless."
"Of you, sir?"
"Me, sir? Do you think there be no diamond courtiers?"
"Sergeant Ambush, issue forth."
Enter Ambush.
"Monopoly, I'll cut off your convoy. Master Sergeant Ambush, I charge you, as you hope to receive comfort from the smell of mace, speak not like a sergeant, but deal honestly. Of whom had you the diamonds?"
"Of your wife, sir, if I'm an honest man." "Of me, you pewter-buttoned rascal."
"Sirrah, you that live by nothing but the carrion of poultry."
"Schoolmaster, hark hither."
"What are my gems and precious stones that were my bail?"
"Forthcoming, sir, though your money is not, your creditor has 'em."
Excellent. Peace. Why, Master Tenterhook, If the diamonds be of the reported value, I'll pay your money, receive 'em, keep 'em till Master Monopoly be fatter in the purse, for Master Monopoly, I know you will not be long empty, Master Monopoly.
Oh, let him have 'em, good Tenterhook. Where are they?
At home. I locked them up.
Now enter Birdlime.
No, indeed, forsooth, I locked them up, and those are they your wife has, and those are they your husband, like a bad liver as he is, would have given to a niece of mine that lies in my house to take physic, to have committed fleshly treason with her.
I in your house? You old...
You, Purdy, and that honest bachelor, never call me old for that matter.
Motherly woman, he's my husband, and no bachelor's buttons are at his doublet.
Lass, I speak innocently. That lean gentleman set in his staff there, but as I am a sinner, both I and the young woman had an eye to the main chance, and though they brought more about them than Captain Candish's voyage came to, they should not, nor could not, unless I had been a naughty woman, have entered the straits.
Have we smelt
you out, foxes?
Do you come after us with hue and cry when you are the thieves yourselves?
Murder, I see, cannot be hid. But if this old Sibyl of yours speak oracles, for my part, I'll be like an almanac that threatens nothing but foul weather. That board has been damned 500 times, and is her word to be taken?
To be damned once is enough for any one of her coat.
Why, sir, what is my coat that you sit thus upon my skirts?
Thy coat is an ancient coat. One of the 7 deadly sins put thy coat first to the making. Do you hear, you mother of iniquity? You that can lose and find your ears when you list. Go, sail with the rest of your body traffickers to the place of sixpenny sinfulness, the suburbs.
I scorn the sinfulness of any suburbs in Christendom. 'Tis well known I have uprisers and downliers within the city, night by night, like a profane fellow as thou art.
Right, I know thou hast. I'll tell you, gentle folks, there's more resort to this fortune teller than of forlorn wives married to old husbands, and of green sickness wenches that can get no husbands, to the house of a wise woman. She has tricks to keep a vaulting house under the law's nose.
How does the law's nose wrong to belie me so?
For either a cunning woman has a chamber in her house, or a physician, or a picture maker, or an attorney, because all these are good cloaks for the rain. And then, if the female party that's cliented above stairs be young, she's a squire's daughter of low degree that lies there for physic, or comes up to be placed with a countess. If of middle age, she's a widow, and has suits at the term or so.
Oh, fie upon her! Burn the wit out of our company.
Let's hem her out of Brentford if she get not the faster to London.
Oh, no, for God's sake, rather hem her out of London and let her keep Brentford still. No, you cannot hem me out of London, and I know this, your rings should have been poxed ere I had touched them. I will take a pair of oars and leave you.
Exit Birdlime.
Let that ruin of intemperance be raked up in dust and ashes. And now, tell me, if you had raised the town, had not the tiles tumbled upon your heads? For you see your wives are chaste, these gentlemen civil. All is but merriment, all but a May game. She has her diamonds, you shall have your money. The child is recovered, the false collier discovered. They came to Brainford to be merry. You are caught in Birdlime, and therefore set the hare's head against the goose giblets. Put all the instruments in tune, and every husband play music upon the lips of his wife, whilst I begin first.
Husbands?
Come, wenches, be it so.
Come, wenches, be it so.
Mistress Justiniano, is it you we were ashamed of all this while of showing your face? Is she your wife, schoolmaster?
Look you, your schoolmaster has been in France and lost his hair. No more parenthesis now, but Justiniano, I will now play the merchant with you. Look not strange at her, nor at me. The story of us both shall be as good as an old wife's tale to cut off our way to London.
Enter Chamberlain.
How now?
Sir, the knight yonder, Sir Gosling, has almost his throat cut by poulterers and townsmen and rascals, and all the noise that went with him. Poor fellows have their fiddle cases pulled over their ears.
Oh,
It's Sir Gosling hurt.
Not much hurt, sir, but he bleeds like a pig, for his crown's cracked.
Then has he been twice cut in the head since we landed? Once with a pottle pot, and now with old iron.
Gentlemen hasten to his rescue, some, while others call for oars.
Away then.
Away then to
Away then
London.
to London.
Farewell, Brainford. Gold that buys health can never be ill spent, nor hours laid out in harmless merriment.
And there is a song. Oars, 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 to London, hey, to London, hey. Hoist up sails and let's away, for the safest bay for us is to land, is London shores. Oars, 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 quickly shall we get to land. If you lend us but a half a hand, oh, lend us half a hand. And it's Eastward Ho now in Westward Ho, and of course Eastward Ho will be the next play that we'll be working on in this loose sequence, and if they'd known that I'd put Eastward Ho in the end of that if I was doing them actually in sequence. There's a lot to unpack on that one. The sort of traditional, shall we say, moralistic ending of picking on Birdlime for being, oh, it's all her fault because she organised the sex workers, therefore she tempted us. Oh no, it's never the client's fault for wanting it in the first place. I feel that Birdlime sort of, I'm interested in this hemming people as well. We'll just shun you in polite society. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. Oh yeah, but Birdlime is so scared of that as like that matters. So all sorts of interesting things about that. Aliki.
I mean, I do think Justiniano has a fair grudge against her. His wife did not want to cheat, but Birdlime kept going, the Earl really wants you. I know you need money, and the Earl really wants you. So he's got a point attacking her, I think.
Whereas I do feel that the other men sort of are sort of just there, just going, oh yeah. Oh yes, it was all yes. Lynn, then Lois, then Eric.
Like he has a good point, but to counterbalance that, Justiniano was not really broke. He was pretending to be broke in order to create a situation where his wife would be more strongly tempted to do something wrong. So he's kind of not in a position to criticize because he's been kind of a shit himself.
Yeah, it's quite hard taking this from Justiniano, isn't it?
Yeah. Lois was saying earlier something about, the women have been accepting gifts from the men, and that's kind of wrong in any case. If whether they intend to sleep with them or not, they intend to sleep with the men that they're going to cheat on their husbands. If they don't, then they're taking gifts from men under false pretenses. But on the other hand, do men have the right to expect sex in exchange for gifts? I feel like there's a lot of moral ambiguity. Like everyone's kind of morally compromised here, except maybe Mrs. Justiniano.
Yes, and there was sort of one of the things about I was thinking about this scene and maybe some of the earlier ones as well, that actually a way of making elements of this work is actually give some of Justiniano's dialogue to her, especially as potentially they could be wearing the same clothes. So I'm wondering if there's something interesting that could be done with that. To play around with what we're expecting from this sequence. Anyway, that's just one of my little how do we fix that problem thought. I like the fact that it's all a bit awkward and untidy. I think a play like this benefits from elements of that. Anyway, Lois. And
Yeah,
then,
I mean, it is
and
morally
then Eric.
complex. I do think that the women are rather ungrateful to Birdlime. I mean, this is, I suppose, the typical behavior of women who have not been unchaste themselves, being extremely self-righteous about somebody who does employ sex workers. But I mean, she has, in a sense, saved their reputation, because if I can follow that business of the two diamonds, that's what ultimately clinches the chastity of Miss Moll Tenterhook. And Birdlime has apparently rapidly sailed all the way to Brainford to provide these diamonds so that she could produce them as evidence. I mean, this bit with the diamonds is terribly complicated, but I think that's what's going on. But I think the fact that you are left with this feeling of, well, yeah, who is exactly most to blame? I mean, it is rather weird here. I think at the point when they all recognize Mistress Justiniano, that must be when he says, we'll, let's see, where is this? We'll reconcile with our wives, and I will begin. And then they recognize her. So I take it when he says, I'll begin, he must take her mask off and kiss her or something.
Mm. Yeah, and then we have this pickup from earlier, the strand with Sir Gosling, which does actually, it is there for a sort of purpose, which is to give us a sort of, oh, we've all got to go. Some stuff's gone down. The people of Brainford are coming for us. You sort him out. We'll get the boat. We'll get the getaway car before the locals drive us out of town, because he's been wandering around with this band, waking everybody up, and everybody's really teed off, which I quite like now, actually, and I'm sort of going, well, okay, we've got to manage some of this overwhelming materialness, but that is doable. So we're going to sort of blur into final thoughts, but we can still dance around a little bit. But I'm going to go to Aliki. You've been here all week. Any final thoughts about the play?
I mean, it's nice, chewy stuff. There's a lot of material there to play around with, and I really look forward to workshopping it. I think there's a great deal of pleasure to be had.
Yeah, because it's there's quite a lot of material. We do need to sort of sift some of it back, and we need to decide which bits, especially as we were talking last time, it felt like the play had kind of ended, but actually it hadn't. And actually, I felt that we still go on, but I do feel there's perhaps a bit too much material in this final act. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really drive anything forward, and if we're moving towards the end of the evening, in the absence of things. But any more, Aliki? Do you want to add to that?
No, I think you're right. I think we could cut quite a bit, and there's some we could cut almost all of the storytelling bits and make the last two acts quite a bit skinnier and tighter, and just concentrate on the physical comedy of it. And I think it'd be great fun.
Okay, we don't have to go to final thoughts for everyone, but Aliki needs to deal with some yogurt or something, I believe. I don't know.
Yum.
These things happen. So, other thoughts about this closing of the play? Because Elizabeth.
Yeah, this is going to be on my list of plays that I have to watch. Make sure I watch the first two episodes of. And there was two things that struck me a lot from the Act 5 was the stuff about gender and the stuff about geography. And I thought that it plays with those two topics really well, and that where it meets in the middle is we were talking about materiality, we were talking about the material, and I feel like there's something to be studied in Westward Ho, something that it lends itself to like a critical analysis. And I thought, oh my gosh, this play is actually a lot smarter than it might look on the surface, and I'm not sure if that's by accident or intentional.
No, I think you're right. We were talking about this last time about, there's so much here that is really good for a historian or something to analyze because it's full of detail about life in ways that you've got to be a bit careful with unpacking to decide How much of it is maybe satire or exaggeration, but I'm really interested in the process of hemming people out of society. I'm assuming that's sort of like putting someone in commentary, but just with a little bit of a cough. So let's not talk to you. But I genuinely don't know, and I'm sure someone does, and I'm sure there's other references to that somewhere else. And it's full of all these details, which gives you something to really play around with in the rehearsal room. But you've also then got to decide how many of those details you're chucking out. We were talking about there's this whole reference earlier in the play to Charing Cross falling down, and we were sort of trying to figure out if that was actually based on anything. And I'd done a Google, and I couldn't find anything about it. Maybe Lois has found something since.
No, not exactly, but I've got or a couple of volumes of the Cambridge edition of Webster, which is really good, and where the notes I think are better than the ones in the standard edition of Dekker, which this play is also in, of course. And they comment that apparently Charing Cross was in a very dilapidated condition at this period, and people often comment on that. So possibly it looks as if it's falling down, or it looks as if it had fallen down.
Yes, because I'm sure we've had a reference to it in another play. It rang a bell of a thing that someone's mentioned in passing. So, yeah. It's interesting in the sense that it's very easy to get a copy of Eastward Ho, but it's much harder to get a copy of Westward Ho. And I feel we're missing a trick here. There's surely a single volume for the 3 Ho plays would be. The market's surely out there for this kind of thing. So I'm very disappointed in the world of play publishing for missing that. Do better. Reasons. Do better. I'm not admonishing anyone really, but yeah, to do that kind of comparison.
And anyway. They're all good plays too.
Yeah, they've all got something going on, as we will discover when we do Eastward and Northward. There is no Southward yet. So. I don't know. For all I know, someone's written one, but not in the period.
Look at the line "Southward Ho" in one play. I was hunting for these things. Somebody does say "Southward Ho," but that's all. There is no play. Yeah.
One day. Anything else about the close of the play before I go into final thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I was going to say that the way they treat Birdlime is kind of basically like they've treated most of if you look at The English Traveller by I think it's Thomas Heywood, one of the Heywoods anyway. You get Scaffa, who has this like really rough treatment of like being who's aboard, the mother to aboard, and basically whatever. You can watch the video now. I wasn't there, but anyway, she basically sort of gets she doesn't get phased out of society, but she basically gets like starved, if I remember correctly. Like no one will give you anything but water or something like that, if I remember correctly, which is quite harsh considering she did nothing to deserve that kind of thing. Depending on your point of view. Then you've also got the mention there's a reference to mackerel in this, which made me smile because it's like Marston's play are pretty awesome, which we need to redo a second look maybe sometime. I don't know. Yeah, just putting it out there. There's also Celestina, who we've done a second look on in Callisto and Melibea, I think.
Yes. And they're all very similar figures. These, this is the kind of figure that we coincidentally we've covered recently in other plays.
Also, I was thinking because when Lynn mentioned, when Lynn mentioned the sort of how women are expected to react to gifts from men, what I thought of was Boyster from Wise Woman of Hoxton, who basically gives this like, I can't remember the main character name, probably Luce, one of the Luces anyway. He's like, I love you, have this gold. Or like sort of,
it's mostly Chartley that does that.
Yeah, but like it's basically sort of that vibe of I give you something and I expect something from you. So it's kind of, I don't know, it raises interesting questions.
Yeah, sadly there are some people who still think that's how it works today. With the dog barking in the background, I will go on to final thoughts then for the play overall. Many of us have been here for the whole week. We've got a sense of the play, how it flows. I'll go to Lois first. Final thoughts? Yeah, we've sort of discussed it ideally needs a bit of a trim. You could do the whole play without cutting. I mean, it'll be a long evening, but it's not completely beyond the bounds of possibility. But I think there is an opportunity with trimming for a modern audience. I think that there is a wealth of detail, but perhaps too much at times. But yes, any thoughts about it?
It's certainly a play that would be enjoyed by an audience that knew something about the period. I mean, it's an ideal play to do at a conference, for instance, where there are lots of people with interests in it. And I think it might even have more general appeal. It's really quite a good story. Yeah, I think, the other thing it's actually a kind of down market version of the Disguised Duke play, of which we've been reading quite a lot. I mean, Justiniano announces at the beginning that he's going to travel, and then he tells us, no, he's not. He's going to stay right there and see how things are going on. And he does make various comments on how things are going in London, and particularly, of course, cuckolding, which is his special subject, and which he does sort of change his views on, I think. At least I'm not sure whether he does, but at least he certainly changes his attitude to his wife. Yeah, I think it's a very attractive play, and the people complained a lot about its immorality apparently at the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of the discussions of this one have to do with its relation to Eastward Ho, and you get people saying that the Eastward Ho dramatists were ridiculing this play or setting it right, or sometimes that they're making it more moral, sometimes that they're making it less moral. I mean, nobody can really agree what is the relationship, and I doubt that there is a great deal of relationship, in fact, except in the titles and the city setting and the basic situation, which is usually courtiers with no money but a certain glamour trying to pursue citizens' wives who have money and who are sort of desperate for a bit of glamour in their lives.
Yes, we're projecting a bit ahead, but my feeling is what is the relationship? It's a cash-in on the title, which there is a desperate attempt to say, oh, it's a coincidence. It's we're not trying to do anything, and I'm sure there are sort of thematic and connections, but I'd be very surprised actually. I mean, we'll discuss it when we get to it. That it's trying to correct or anything like that. Really, I think it's just riffing on a starting point.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But I say, no spoilers. We'll see how it goes when we get there. Eric, you weren't here from the beginning. You've only had Act 5. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was very confused about people, but then it's kind of like, when someone goes, yeah, let's watch the last episode of Lost together, and you're like, well, I'm still lost. You kind of don't have all the threads. But it was fun to have that sort of, what's called, the dirty jokes, of course. We're always here for the dirty jokes. And, I don't know, it's interesting just as an ending, I guess, that you don't get a sort of, you get the reunion, but you don't get the sort of, this is what husbands must do for their wives, or what wives must do for their. You don't get the moral of the tale, I guess, unless you really want to look for it. I guess, maybe.
Alan, you have been here for the whole sequence. Any final thoughts?
I think am I right in the assumption this is a very early piece by this particular collaboration?
Well, it's. I don't know if we know of many other collaborations with this particular combination. I mean, they're very consistent in writing styles, actually, on the whole. I mean, you can tell there is a difference, but it's and there are some minor inconsistencies in terms of potentially of how the plot is structured. But they seem to be working together rather well. So far. Sorry,
I mean, what struck me was there's an awful lot of meta theatre references. I mean, there's quotations in there from all over the place and allusions to all sorts of other plays that we've covered over the last number of years. I think we found where to cut. I reckon that we could out of the 17 pages, which is what we've done in Act 5 today, there's probably about 12 pages that could go. Because there was a lot of it which didn't actually add anything much to the overall development of the thing, and seemed to me very much we'll put a bit in here to give this particular actor something to play with, or that's a riff he's done before which goes down well. And I think one could trim quite a lot of that. The storytelling is a prime bit of it, but the final sort of the farce sequence of the two neighbouring rooms, yeah, okay, but that was bringing up memories of 1960s farce, which was not a genre I was particularly enamoured of.
Well, yes, but that's personal taste. If you like farce or you don't. I mean, it's interesting now that I sort of can get an overview of the act, because it's basically you've got two scenes. You've got the scenes where the wives dismiss the husbands. You have a bridging scene in between that, which we can keep or dismiss to a larger or greater degree, and then you have the return of the actual husbands in the second scene. And actually, there is an element that the storytelling scene that we have with Moll at the beginning is sort of important, because there is an element that we need to see the interaction between the wives and their potential lovers doesn't quite nothing's connecting there, and they're not actually having a great time. Well, I still think you could probably cut most of that out, but you do need to have them to have some time together, and it can't just be that the tobacco turns the tables. It's not quite enough. I mean, I'd like to keep some of the Birdlime and Gosling bit in just to set up the final close, because I do like the idea that he's gone off and pissed everybody off, and you've got the fiddle players. But of course, having fiddle players and having all of that stuff potentially increases the cast size in ways that are quite annoying. And they've got a better union than us, so the musicians will get more. It's always a little tricky. So I don't know if it's as extreme as it may look. I think there's definitely stuff that can be cut, and definitely cut down quite a lot. I don't think there's stuff that necessarily goes wholesale, as it were, in that way. Elizabeth, you've only been here today. How was Act 5 for you?
I was really shocked when Alan said he would cut like 12 out of the 17 pages we've read today, because I liked a lot of those pages. I thought a lot of them were good. It felt a little bit bloated. It could have been cut down a bit, but I thought 12 is a bit harsh, maybe. That was just my opinion. And I do like a good farce, so I do like people running in and out of doors and tripping over things, and that stuff always makes me laugh. But I think the play was fine in terms of characters, in terms of plot, but in terms of what it's doing thematically, I think it's where it gets very interesting. And I was wondering if that is like a theme, like a running thing with a through line between all these Ho plays, the Ho-Ho-Hos. I just thought maybe that they all have that in common, that the plays are good, they're fine, but what they do thematically is actually very, very interesting. And they actually have a complex other life that's a critical analytical life.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree on that. All of that. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so my big disappointment with the final sequences is the way Birdlime gets treated in the end, and I wonder if you could massage that a little so that that you put some more emphasis on her defiance. Like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I make my living the way I make my living. If you don't like the way I make my living, change yourself. Bye, I'm off to make money. So that's something to think about, is do we want to massage that, or do we want to leave it the way it is? In terms of like the thing overall, I agree with Aliki. It would be really fun, and I think really productive to do a lot of experimenting and workshopping and running scenes and talking about it. It'd be great to have the luxury to do that before your editor, adapter, dramaturg got to work trimming the script. Because part of it's practically like a religious belief of mine that a 3-hour comedy is a contradiction in terms. Maybe that's cultural. But yeah, a really long comedy is certainly going to defy your audience's expectations. And the two things about this play that make it tricky are that it's quite complicated. The plotting is kind of complicated. There's a lot of characters to keep track of. There's 4 couples altogether, plus 4 boyfriends, the Earl and the 3 So there's a lot of characters to keep track of. There's the bit with the diamonds, which, like Lois, I know it's significant, but I don't know how. So it's very busy, it's very complicated, but you've got to keep it moving in order to keep it interesting. So those two things are maybe an intention a little bit. You've got to enable your audience to follow, but you can't dawdle. So yeah, I think this one would need a lot of thinking about and a lot of workshopping, but I think you could come up with a really enjoyable product. The one last sort of footnote is like, nobody has said anything about the oars pun, and I just
oh yeah, I wondered if anybody else was going to suggest that. Yes.
Sadly, we left that house earlier. I think the other thing is when it's a thing that obviously we need to deal with today. But in a sense, structurally, what this is doing is actually really, really efficient and really, really well put together. It is a 5-act play. There is supposed to be some kind of marking of a break between the acts, and each act is of itself quite nicely structured. We're trying to, of course, fit it into a 2-act structure, and that actually isn't wholly fair on as a criticism for the play. In a sense, it's not bloated and it's not overlong. Act 5 isn't too long. Act 5 is the right length for an Act 5, and an Act 5 that is also of itself a thing. It's sort of like looking at episodic drama and watching it on television and watching it all in one sitting and saying, well, that was a bit repetitive because but no, you're supposed to have watched it a week after, and there needs to be a fight every episode. That kind of logic. Back to Lynn.
Yeah, that's I was going to mention this, that another challenge we have is the way that the act and interval tradition has changed. We talked yesterday, I think, about the end of Act 3 feels like an interval, but if you do that and then you trim 4 and 5 as much as we've been talking about, you have a really unbalanced act structure. So do you do that? Do you do like an hour and a half and 40 minutes, or do you try to find somewhere else to place the interval? So there's another challenge. Not the fault of the play, not anybody's fault, but just the way we do theater has changed. And so you need to think about how you're going to make that work.
That said, I think there's a lot of trims that could be made throughout the text just generally. I think there's a lot of salami edits that could be made to keep that balance. But I prefer a shorter second half than a first half anyway. I just think psychologically...
But you want the balance to be like...
You don't want it too extreme,
An hour and 15 minutes and an hour, or an hour and 45 minutes. You don't want it to be way out of balance.
I went to see a show recently where the first half was shorter than the second. You always get to that last bit, the last 10 minutes, going, well, it should have ended now. Why is it still going on? And you just become much more self-conscious, and you're just putting a rod for your own back by doing that. I won't mention the play. Sarah, any final thoughts?
There was much about this play that I really loved. I loved all the farce. I loved that there was some great lines in it. I like a lot of the characters in terms of I like the way they're written, and I just think it would really pop on stage this and just be a fantastic production. But I am having trouble with Justiniano as a character. I don't feel I feel he does work. I feel he does work as a character. But the misogyny is just really high, which I can't believe I'm saying, because when is an early modern comedy not misogynistic? I mean, they kind of all are to a degree. But I find that I understand why that scene where he reconciles with his wife isn't in the play, for the reasons Lois was talking about earlier. The fact that, the playwrights decided they wanted to keep the element of surprise to add to the fun of the unmasking. But I just feel it's really lacking, because he's a deeply unpleasant character in the first half of this play. He really, really is. And there's not really, for me, on the page anyway, you could maybe do something in production, but there's not enough on the page to transition him into the kind of the second half of his journey as a character. And then when you combine that with the way everyone treats Birdlime, I think I thought what Elizabeth said was really, really interesting, actually, about, taking a sort of a more critical approach to this and sort of looking at the underlying themes. I think if I was directing it, I'd be tempted to lean really hard into that misogyny, actually. And sort of point out the fact that, yeah, this is a really quite nasty society that we're living in. And actually make the audience a bit uncomfortable, because on the one hand, they're really enjoying it because it's really good fun. But on the other hand, like, Lynn was saying, could you massage that ending with Birdlime? I'd be tempted to actually lean into it, I think, and actually sort of make the audience shift in their seats slightly, because there's no way around it really, because of the sort of character that the main protagonist is. He's just he doesn't go on any kind of he goes on a journey, but he doesn't get sort of saved in any way. It's like we don't see, because we don't have that scene with his wife. It's kind of, I don't know. For me, there's something missing, and it creates a hole in the play that I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but I'd certainly be tempted to lean into it and make it deliberate in a production. But, having said all of that's the kind of stuff that makes putting on these plays really, really interesting. And it's a really great play. And I think it would, I think, it's definitely, I do like Aliki. I really want to workshop it and dig into it and see what else is there and what we could find.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I mean, this is the thing about the misogyny is, it is baked in by the basic convention of these kinds of plays. Whereas this play is doing something slightly different with that, in the sense that, I mean, who predicted the ending was going to be this? Who predicted that many of the endings to each act was going to be the ending to each act? So it's doing something that is unpredictable. And I think I agree with you on the Birdlime thing. I think they all go for Birdlime, and Birdlime just goes, ping, it's water off a duck, doesn't care. You can do what you like to me. Actually, I'm already slightly outside of your society to a degree. I think there's an element you can do with that. And that everybody else is, yes, suddenly horrible, because they've got a scapegoat. She's the scapegoat of all of their terrible behaviour. And they're all pretty terrible in their own way, just to a slightly greater or lesser degree. There's still a misogynistic edge to the men basically get away with cheating on their wives. I mean, I think the play sort of massages it by saying, well, it's never really consummated, but you're sort of going, yeah, I'm not sure it wasn't really. How far have they gone with the various sex workers that they've encountered? So I think it's a complex enough play for that to be something that is thematically played with, and as Elizabeth was saying earlier as well. Whereas some of the other plays we've done, which are just, here is a fun, happy story of misogyny, and you're just going, well, we've got nowhere to go with this, people. The audience aren't going to laugh, and it's not fun. Whereas this, we've got really fun sequences, but they do function in slightly different ways. Lois, you've been, I think, waving for a while.
Yeah, well, it's partly because I wanted to comment on that whole Birdlime situation. And what you said about scapegoating is, I think, exactly right. And I think it could be played that way. I mean, the wives all suddenly turn into Puritans and take a very self-righteous tone toward her. And the men just stand there silently and looking dumb. And you could get the feeling that the wives are partly taking it out on her because they don't want to take it out on their husbands, because they can't really. I think it could work. It's also very like the end of The Malcontent. I mean, Malevoly banishes Mackerels to the suburbs, and that idea of the suburbs, we get quite often that those are the places that you could get outside the city jurisdiction. Yeah, I mean, I was also just going to point out about the authorship of the play, because Alan mentioned it some time ago, that Webster and Dekker had been involved before, and probably in a two-part play about Lady Jane Grey, which was then somehow chopped up to make the play called Sir Thomas Wyatt. Lady Jane hasn't survived, but Sir Thomas has. And apparently the team was Dekker, Heywood, Webster, Chettle, and Wentworth Smith. And it may well be more or less the beginning of Webster's career, writing little bits. And now here he's just collaborating with one other playwright who's also already pretty experienced. And, was obviously going to go on to do bigger stuff. I just think they seem to have had a quite good relationship in this, and they did collaborate on other things too.
Yeah, I mean, for all the minor quibbles we were talking about, time sequencing and things, and how does certain things fit together, it does feel that it's a very unified play. It does feel like the two playwrights have worked together. They've managed to make their writing styles match. Even, as I say, you can detect there are differences, but not in the way that you're going, whoa, hang on, what happened there? Which is important. Any other thoughts to close the session? Anything new before we head eastward ho, as we will, as soon as we can possibly make it. And certainly when we go eastward ho, we will put it in the release schedule to immediately follow this video, because I'm not an idiot. So even if it takes us actually in real world weeks to get round to doing it, it should follow on next week or next time, whatever the schedule of the release of these videos is. As nobody seems to have waved at me, I'll close the session. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye to the place of sixpenny sinfulness.